Hi, this video is about dogs in ancient Egypt and is a tribute to my dog Jasper, who we lost this week. It's now Saturday the 2nd of May and we lost him on Tuesday evening. We had to make the really hard decision to let him go because his arthritis had really just got the better of him. He was 16 years old. And in this video I'm going to talk about him because I really wanted to introduce him to you. I want to feature all of my pets in this channel and you weren't able to meet him. And I've also going to read this, which is an essay I wrote 14 years ago for university about dogs in ancient Egypt. Jasper came from Hungary, from Budapest. We got him when he was 10. We had him for nearly 6 years. We got him from a charity called Hun Dogs, where they find adoptable dogs that need a home from Hungary, and they try to find homes for them either in Hungary or elsewhere in Europe. My other dog Daisy comes from the same or through the same charity. So we got Daisy in July 2019, and that was a few months after my old dog Bertie died. Bertie was an Airedale Terrier, and up until that point we'd only really had Airedale Terriers as a family. They're pedigree dogs, but when Bertie died, Mum was looking at a website and saw Daisy, and then found the charity that was advertising her as available for adoption, and we adopted her. And she had been chained up in like a nasty dirty yard type place where she was basically mistreated or even abused. She was very, very anxious and nervous when she came to us, underweight, very worried about noises and sudden movements, and being like hosed down. So if she got muddy at the park, we couldn't hose her down because obviously somebody had done that as a form of abuse to her. And she was very anxious about food. When Jasper came to us, just over a year later, so it was like a year and 8 months later, he wasn't like that at all. He was very well adapted to a home, and we later found out that his story was that when he was around a year old, we've actually got photos, I'll put them on the screen. He was found in a park in Budapest, and he was rescued by two ladies, taken to a nice couple who had dogs and cats, and initially to integrate him into the pack, but not to tread on the toes of the dogs that were already the dogs of the family in the house. He was kept outside for just a little while, like a week or something, just so that he didn't invade their territory before they started bonding with him as a pack member, and then he was allowed in the actual house. And that explains why he's like, because he was a stray effectively for the first approximately year of his life. When he came to us, he was such a good family dog, and we didn't know any of this because the place that he had been brought from was a rescue centre in Budapest or somewhere near there. We didn't really know anything about his history, but he's so good at being in a house, sleeping in a dog bed, you know, being polite and patient some of the time. I'll tell you more about his personality in a minute. It made so much sense that he had been integrated into a family for years, and it also explained why he's so good with our two cats, because he had cats in that home, and he had another dog or more than one dog in that home, which explains why he was so good with Daisy. So he integrated really well into our home, and he was such a funny, cheeky boy. Very stubborn, wanted to do what he wanted to do and didn't want to do anything other than that. So this is some footage I shot during a practice video for my channel. I tucked the dogs in bed, kissed them on the head, and they would usually stay there. But then Jasper appeared at the top of the stairs, and I thought he just didn't want to go to bed yet, but actually what he was doing is he could smell food. Such a silly Billy. Didn't really react to human words, so the only time he ever really responded to words was his name, or a sort of a negative noise like stop it, or a no, or a noise like that. Otherwise you could say come here and he wouldn't come here, or sit and he wouldn't sit. We didn't bother really training him in the traditional way because he was already 10. He didn't know English, and by the time we thought he might be familiar with some of the words that we use, we'd already learnt that he's pretty not trainable through words. So we used hand signals like come here. That was the main one, come here. That worked. But mainly we used Daisy, because Daisy is so trainable, so clever, and so responds to human words, that we made her do what we wanted him to do. So if we wanted him to sit in his bed, we got her to sit in her bed and he would copy her. And she's such a good big little sister, because he really was like a little silly little boy that she's almost like his big sister, even though she's younger than him and smaller than him, and such a good companion. They were we like to say that Jasper thought they were best friends and Daisy could take him or leave him. But yeah, they spent nearly 6 years together. Nearly 6 years together. We've had Daisy nearly 7 years. So we're keeping an eye on Daisy and the cats, because Daisy hasn't got a little friend anymore. Well, she's got the cats, but he was with her all the time. And I think she's quite enjoying being the only dog again, because she gets all the attention, all the cuddles, all the biscuits. But you never know. But the cats, and Rosie was really clingy yesterday. And Ruby's feeling our emotions. She's very empathetic. And she's currently got another flare-up of stress cystitis because we are upset. So she is upset. So we have to be really looking after them. And it's really hard because even though we knew it was his time, we weren't ready. He had arthritis in all of his legs, and he was doing really well up until like last Saturday, and he just started falling over all the time. So we had to make the hard decision to say goodbye to him on Tuesday, because he'd had a really bad week of his arthritis just being so intolerable towards the end, like Sunday and Monday and then Tuesday. We made the decision on Monday. He was such a big part of my life. Obviously we had him for nearly 6 years, which is a long time, but not as long as like his whole life. I would have liked to have got him from a younger age. He was a very here's Daisy. Hi Daisy. He was a very silly boy. We think he was a lurcher cross Dutch Shepherd, which he's explains why he was so stubborn and there's a picture of him up there on the mantelpiece. He was so stubborn and intelligent, and he really needed a job. We wouldn't have been able to get him as a young dog because he would have needed a job. Dutch Shepherds are working dogs, and they're sometimes used in the, I don't know, the police or something. He would have thrived in a job. So yeah, he I'll just tell you a few things about what he did. He loved carrots. So he'd open the fridge to get something out, and he'd stick his head in the fridge, and above the vegetable drawer, which is right at the bottom of the fridge, we keep meat. And he would shove his head in the fridge, and he'd have his head at that sort of level. And you knew he was looking at the carrots and not at the meat. He loved carrots that much. And that was one of the things he wouldn't eat on Tuesday. He didn't finish his carrot. So that shows you he just wasn't there. He couldn't do sit, paw, any of that. We didn't bother training him because you don't force an arthritic dog to sit just because a human says sit. You know, it's like, if you want him to sit, there's a purpose to it, not because it's a trick. But he taught us tricks, and we happened upon tricks, like, not tricks, the sort of particularities of his interactions with us. So he would do touch. So you put your hand out and he'd touch it with his nose, and that was like a signal that everything's all right. And he would come in after his breakfast, even if I hadn't given it to him. He would come into the dining room where I work, and he would touch my hand with his nose to say thank you for breakfast, even though I hadn't made it sometimes. He was a big softie. He looked scary, but he was a big softie. And he didn't like some other dogs. He didn't like dogs that looked like him, or dogs of a shepherd type. So he didn't like collies, he didn't like German shepherds, anything like Belgian shepherds, anything like that. But he'd love little dogs, especially dachshunds. He loved the cats. He used to whine. He used to go whenever he saw a cat, and I think he did that on his last day. And he saw one of the cats come in the dining room. He would come and lay on the floor in my bedroom in the morning sometimes. Just lay there quietly, wait for me to get up. He'd let you do all his medicine. He's a good boy. He'd let you do eye drops like 6 times a day, in exchange for biscuits, of course. He's a good boy. He's a very good boy. We're a dog-loving family and a cat-loving family, and the mantelpiece is covered in little figurines of dogs. We need to find one that looks like Jasper. He was a unique-looking dog because he was a mix. Looking at the picture of him. I better read this essay. Right, this is an essay I wrote in my MA, which was 2011 to 2012. So Egyptology MA at the University of Liverpool. My other MA was in Museum Studies. That was a few years later. So the date at the top of this essay is the 16th of May 2012. I assume that was the deadline, but I also assume it was the date I finished it because I never handed an essay in early. ADHD. Right, so I don't know how long it is. It's 2,000 words maybe. I'm just going to read it to you. I haven't read it in 14 years. So not long since I wrote it, actually. Like, as in the day. It was the 16th of May, and this is the 2nd of May. It would have been one of my last essays I handed in before I started my dissertation. And I did this for my social life in ancient Egypt module with Professor Chris Eyre. It's funny because I started the research for an essay on dogs for another module and found out that the essay actually didn't answer the question. It was one of those write your own questions, but it was like not the point. I've got this pair of scissors here, by the way. I was using them, I just chucked them there. It wouldn't have answered the point of the whole module, and the professor asked me to do a different essay for social life, and I didn't understand how on earth to do that one, so I just said, no, I'm not doing that, I'm doing this. So I managed to use the research I'd already done to write this essay, and I had quite a nice time writing it, I remember. Okay, so I've got I can't remember what that little bit at the top is called. It's in smaller text. It's not like a summary, but anyway, I'll read it to you and then I'll get on to the actual essay itself. It's called A Study of the Roles of Dogs and Their Place in Ancient Egyptian Society Through Iconographic Evidence. Domesticated dogs are well regarded in modern Western cultures as beloved companions and valuable workers in disciplines such as policing and agricultural activities. Analysis of ancient Egyptian iconographical evidence demonstrates that, while there were indeed feral dogs which lived on the borders of or outside Egyptian society, dogs were often treated as pets or respected as efficient working dogs in roles such as hunting. The appreciation of these animals is demonstrated through the fact that many of these dogs had names and were recorded on their masters' funerary monuments or even given their own burials. This brief article intends to discuss the role of dogs and their place in ancient Egyptian society. Dogs inhabited the area now known as Egypt for millennia before its establishment as a country, and pre-dynastic sources demonstrate that dogs were brought into the human world and domesticated by this early period. As demonstrated by this is a footnote, as demonstrated by the Nakada I bowl, so very early in Egypt as we recognise it, wasn't a state yet, but was in the formative period becoming a state in the Nakada I period, which was over 4,300 BCE, so a long time ago. So as demonstrated by the Nakada bowl, which depicts a man with 3 dogs on leashes. Analysis and interpretation of textual, iconographic and archaeological evidence demonstrates how they were perceived during the Pharaonic period. This article critically analyses artistic representations of dogs, primarily tomb scenes, in order to demonstrate their place in society, in particular their roles as human companions and also as working dogs. Dogs within the human world. The domestication of dogs brought these previously wild animals into the human world. They were now members of society, and their relationship with and subordination to humans is demonstrated through the use of collars and leashes. I remember doing this. I just had this revelation one day. Oh, look, they've got collars on. That meant they were controllable. That meant they were brought within the human sphere, the human world, to do what the humans wanted them to do. I don't know if I talk about cats in this essay, but obviously ancient Egypt is famous for their love of cats. Cats are trainable, but it's on the whim of the cat. There are quite a few videos of cats online now where they do tricks, clever tricks, ones that you would think a dog would do, or press buttons to communicate with humans through the words that are programmed into the buttons that humans can understand, and cats understand that button means a certain thing because the humans have modelled that button in particular with a thing. Like, so for example, look up Elsie the talking cat or Flounder the talking cat. They are amazing. But cats are inherently independent, and I can hear one coming. It must be a Rosie, because she pads really heavily on the floor even though she's only 3 kilos. Rosie! There you are! Wow, it's like you came on command when I was talking about how cats don't come on command. Oh, wow! She's come to show me that I'm wrong. Yes, so basically, cats in ancient Egypt were beloved, but dogs are, I think, underestimated about how useful and valued they were in ancient Egypt. So, hence this essay. Right, collars and leashes. Okay, so many creatures are represented wearing collars and leashes in ancient Egyptian art, such as baboons and leopards in interaction with humans and the human world. Iconographic evidence demonstrates that dogs wore collars. She's scratching something, probably not the scratching post, which is right next to the area she's scratching. Cats. Probably the carpet. Poor carpet. We've written it off. We need a new one, but why bother? We've got cats. They'll just destroy it and then we'll move house. I don't know. Iconographic evidence demonstrates that dogs wore collars which were tied in a knot around their necks, or more elegant collars, such as the example from the tomb of Mai-Her-Peri. Collars and leashes are important evidence for understanding dogs' positions in ancient Egyptian society. The placing of a collar on a dog's neck demonstrates that this animal was deliberately brought into the human world and that it was subjugated. These collars were utilised to control and restrain dogs, as they are in modern times, in order to force them to behave correctly in the human world. They also claimed human ownership over these dogs. Domesticated dogs, whether wearing a collar and leash or not, were under the control of their human masters and held a place in their lives and in society for the most part as pets or working dogs. Now, I'm looking at this and seeing the limited number of footnotes. When we were in university, oh my goodness, referencing things was so important, because if we had a unique thought of our own, we had to back it up. If I don't use footnotes in this, I'm not plagiarising. They are my unique thoughts. They are things that I have developed from my own experience of having dogs since the age of 7. And one of my lecturers said that we are not allowed unique thought about ancient Egypt until we have done a PhD. But I feel like I have a level of lived expertise of growing up with dogs to know that I was able to write almost a whole paragraph with no references. This is my own argument, and I'm really proud of that. The fact that in this essay I've done nearly a whole paragraph shows that I have formed an argument based on my expertise and have been confident enough to actually share my theory about something to do with ancient Egypt, and that makes me proud of my own research, and I think it's proof of my love of dogs. Okay, so the next section is called Dogs' Roles and Place Within the Human World, Pets, in inverted commas. Various artistic representations of dogs depict them as active members of Egyptian society, in scenes of everyday life and in interaction with humans. In particular, these iconographic sources demonstrate dogs' roles in society as humans' companions, pets. Dogs are frequently represented on their owners' funerary monuments. In many examples, dogs are depicted close to their masters and mistresses, often sitting or lying beneath chairs or nearby. Cats are represented like this more, but there are some dogs, which I think is really special because, as I said, cats are really loved in ancient Egypt, but if you've got dogs sitting in the same position, it shows how much these particular dogs were loved. Their close proximity to the tomb owners in these intimate scenes although in the majority of cases within a funerary context of offering scenes, in all likelihood reflected their close relationship in life, in particular in a domestic context. The toilet scene, as in doing makeup, doing hair. The toilet scene on the sarcophagus of Queen Aashit, wife of Mentuhotep Nepepetra, my favourite king, likewise depicts this motif, demonstrating that dogs were also companions of members of the royal family. The tomb scene of Jehuti Hotep provides evidence for the relationship between him and his dog, named Ankhu, which probably means something like living one. Maybe they got that dog after a previous dog had died? The scene represents Ankhu taking part in the procession of his master, in which servants transport Jehuti Hotep's sedan chair and other personal possessions. The dog is represented in a scale relative to the importance of the owner, rather than relative to the height of the other figures in the scene, indicating the close relationship between Ankhu and his master. Iconographic evidence representing dogs in daily life scenes demonstrates dogs' relationship with humans in other circumstances. Two scenes, I'm stumbling over my words, but normally I would have read my writing like 4 times before I do a video. I haven't read this in 14 years, so I'm stumbling, sorry. Two scenes from the tomb of Ipi depicts dogs with their masters in working contexts. In the agricultural scene, a man carrying goods on a yoke, one of those things that goes over your shoulders that can hold buckets on rope. A man carrying goods on a yoke is followed closely by his dog, who is looking behind him in a timid expression, perhaps trying to hide between the master's legs. If this interpretation is correct, this scene therefore suggests a relationship between dogs and humans in ancient Egypt in which a dog could rely on his master for comfort and protection. In another scene, a gardener works close to a garden shrine with his dog sitting behind him. These scenes, which portray their masters at their occupations, suggest the possibility that these dogs may have had a role in which they served as working dogs. Dogs which had a working role rather than a companionship role are attested in textual sources such as the Stela of Kay, which discusses the 5 dogs which worked with him in his career in the desert police. Working dogs had a particularly important role in ancient Egyptian society due to their contribution to human activities, including hunting. So the next section is dogs' roles and place within the human world, hunting dogs. The hunting of wild animals was an essential activity in ancient Egypt. Primarily, it served as the means by which humans were able to procure the consumable resources of the wild animals which inhabited the desert and the Nile Valley and Delta. The hunting and butchering of these animals provided resources such as meat, ivory, leather, bone, horn, feathers, and gut. Wild animals were also captured alive in order to be fattened up during the Old Kingdom or to serve as offerings for the gods or deceased. Hunting was also used as a means of controlling dangerous animals which threatened Egyptian settlements, such as hippopotami. It may also be regarded as a sport and a pastime. Hunt scenes were a common motif in iconographic sources, particularly in tomb reliefs and in other media such as ostraca, which are either limestone or pottery shards, which were like waste material, so like a broken pot or a flake of limestone that had been discarded during the digging out of a rock-cut tomb. So anyone could pick them up and draw on them or write on them if you were able to write. These representations provide important evidence for hunting activities in ancient Egypt, such as the environments in which hunts took place, the prey and the predators. Fishing and fowling scenes, which are really important scenes in Middle Kingdom tombs of middle class people particularly, who elite people who were able to afford a tomb and afford an artist to go and paint in their tomb. It's a famous scene in which the tomb owner is represented standing on a boat either spearing fish or with a big net, catching birds as they made their migration through the Nile Valley, because at a particular time of year there were so many birds going through the Nile Valley. You just had to stick a net up and you were able to just capture birds. They didn't have chickens in ancient Egypt, so if you wanted some sort of game meat or poultry, you captured a bird out of the sky, and it would be like a duck or some other sort of edible bird. There's one particular scene from, I think it's the tomb of Nebamun, where a cat has caught a bird, and I've got a feeling there's one with a fish as well. But yes, these fishing and fowling scenes demonstrating that hunting activities took place on the Nile and in marshland in order to capture or kill various species of birds, fish and other animals indigenous to these areas, such as hippopotami. Other scenes represent hunting taking place within the desert environment, the prey being a plethora of different species such as oryx, gazelles and hyenas. These scenes are essential sources of information for the roles of dogs within hunting contexts. Dogs are natural and expert hunters due to their musculature, speed, instincts and superior senses. Jasper would have been a great hunting dog. He survived for almost a year in a park. He must have done efficient hunting. He nearly pulled me into a tree one day by pulling me so fast on the lead to catch a squirrel, where he had his front paws up the tree. The squirrel had already run out, but I would have gone smack into the tree if I hadn't stopped myself. That's the thing with dogs, particularly dogs like Jasper. You need quick reflexes. From the Old Kingdom onwards, dogs were commonly represented as predators in desert hunt scenes. In contrast, the hunting scenes which took place on the Nile or in marshland do not portray dogs, but other predators such as cats, demonstrating that the dog's natural hunting ground was the desert. As previously discussed, dogs are particularly suited to and effective at hunting. Did I need that sentence? I don't know. This was recognised by humans from the earliest times, and people naturally took advantage of their skills, as evidenced by the depiction inside a dynastic bowl. Dynastic bowl? I could have been a bit more specific of the time. Maybe I meant pre-dynastic bowl. Anyway, in which a man with a bow guides 4 dogs on leashes, possibly representing the man leading his dogs to a hunt. Dogs continued to be essential hunting tools and weapons throughout much of Egyptian history. Old Kingdom tomb reliefs demonstrate the singular importance of dogs within the hunting context. Hunting scenes such as in the 4th dynasty tombs of Ra-Hotep and Metjen demonstrate that, at this time, dogs were the sole tool or weapon with which animals could be hunted. Scenes from royal hunts led by the king, such as in Sahura's temple, represent the king shooting his prey with a bow and arrows, while dogs also attack the animals. In contrast, private hunting scenes of the Old Kingdom demonstrate that the bow and arrow were not utilised by non-royal individuals. The prey in these scenes are injured or killed by dogs only. As a result, dogs are essential hunting weapons during the Old Kingdom, and consequently, due to the importance of hunting to Egyptian everyday life, hunting dogs held a significant place in Egyptian society. Later sources, in particular tomb scenes dating to the Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom, demonstrate that private individuals now utilised arrows and other weapons to injure or kill animals during desert hunts. Hunting scenes in the 12th dynasty tombs of Intef-Ika and Ukhotep. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, and 18th dynasty tombs of Amenemhat and Ineni represent the tomb owners using large bows to shoot arrows at their prey. The tomb scene of Ukhotep also depicts the tomb owner holding a mace. Bash, bash. Little round thing on the end of a stick, bash, bash, skull. The use of these weapons, however, did not make dogs redundant or obviate. Ooh, someone's been using a thesaurus. Or obviate their use in desert hunts. These tomb scenes in which dogs attack prey alongside the tomb owner who uses a bow and arrows demonstrate that private individuals still chose to use hunting dogs, indicating their importance when other weapons were available. Analysis of hunt scenes reveals significant evidence for dogs' roles in hunts, in particular in relation to humans. The tomb owner is represented as a large figure, either overseeing the hunt or as in Old Kingdom tomb scenes, or actively participating in the hunt, shooting prey with a bow and arrows. Typically, the tomb owner does not interact with the dogs. However, a dog in the hunting scene of Ineni is represented by the feet of the tomb owner, perhaps indicating his role as Ineni's pet, as opposed to just a working dog. In contrast, other figures, apart from the tomb owner, are represented interacting with hunting dogs in several scenes. The hunt scene in the tomb of Ptahhotep represents a man wearing distinctive clothing holding two hunting dogs on leashes. This scene is similar to Ptahhotep's offering scene, which represents another man in identical clothing holding onto four dogs by their leashes. The tomb scene of Amenemhet depicts a man holding onto the leash of a dog which is springing forward, keen to participate in the hunt. Such scenes possibly represent men training these dogs so that they are controllable, in particular in overcoming the dog's natural instincts to maul their prey immediately, so that instead the animals were captured, injured or killed according to the needs of the human masters. So that's like when spaniels catch game birds that have been shot. They have to have a soft mouth in order to not bite the animal, because the bird is then taken to the human, who will then prepare it or give it to someone to prepare for food. You don't want the dogs to have actually bitten into it. The use of collars and leashes would have been an effective training tool, as they are in the training of modern dogs. And this is what is, oh, that's a bad sentence. I didn't proofread that very well. When I wrote essays, this probably would have been an all-nighter, and I probably would have been working on sleep deprivation for about, let's call it about 30 hours by this point. So yeah, that wasn't good proofreading. So we were talking about the use of collars and leashes as effective training tools. This is perhaps what is represented in the hunting scenes of Ptahhotep and Amenemhet. These dogs are separated from the rest of their packs, possibly due to the need for further training. Evans suggests that the scenes which depict hunters kneeling next to the dogs, pointing towards the hunt, represent these men drawing the dogs' attention to their prey in the hunt. However, it is possible that this represents a method of training in which the dogs, alerted to the activity happening before them and excited by the hunt, are restrained on their leashes, therefore teaching them through conditioning to be more restrained in these circumstances. Ooh, AS level psychology coming out there. I didn't do well in that course. I did learn about conditioning though, about how it was used in dogs. So it was useful for something. Desert hunts were highly controlled activities. Numerous tomb scenes demonstrate that the areas in which hunts took place were frequently fenced with netting. Archaeological evidence of such an enclosure has been discovered in Soleb, Upper Nubia, close to Amenhotep III's Hebsed temple. The prey was confined inside this enclosure in order that these animals were for the hunters to target. That's bad grammar. But that's like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, I'm not vegetarian or vegan because I have issues with food, but I do not condone the hunting of animals. And that's cruel. To capture animals and then also, what kind of sport is that, honestly? Shooting fish in a barrel, shooting wild animals in a confined space, honestly. Cheating as well. People used ropes or sticks in order to restrain and control prey within the fenced areas or to prevent them from escaping from these enclosures. According to the iconographic sources, trained hunting dogs excelled within these hunts. They easily attacked and killed their prey by biting limbs, the torso, and mauling the neck. They are portrayed in tomb scenes as attacking animals that were far larger than themselves. They were highly efficient weapons in the hunting context, and due to the importance of hunting in ancient Egypt, they held an essential place in Egyptian society. This is the conclusion. Iconographic evidence forms a picture of dogs' roles and their place in society. Domesticated dogs were important members of Egyptian society through their roles both as pets and working dogs. The Egyptians often recognised this. The perceived importance of dogs is demonstrated by the cases in which people provided their dogs with names, immortalised them on funerary monuments, and in some cases even provided the dog with its own coffin or burial. Dogs were beloved by both private individuals and royals, such as in the case of Abu Tiu, the guard dog of an Old Kingdom king, who was buried at the king's command and provided with a coffin from the royal treasury and a funerary stealer, which was, normally a provision for humans that the king loved, but this time it was his very special dog. So thank you for watching this video. I'm going to take Daisy out for a walk now. Got to look after the dogs we've still got. We've got to hold on to the memories of our beloved dogs. And if you have a dog or any pets, please give them an extra special hug. I'll see you next time.